Hey guys, and welcome to the pull section of our just-in-time series. Now in this section we'll go through push versus pull, we'll go through Kanbans, a simple Kanban calculation, as well as the different types of pull. But before we get started, here's a little intro into the subject. During college I worked at a national book chain. Once a month it was my job to take an inventory of the store and to move items that had not sold in 3 months to the discount racks. Only a small portion of the books off the rack ever got sold. Eventually, I had to dispose of the books that went unsold. It still bothers me to this day when I think back at all those brand new books that ended up in a landfill. How many man hours did it take to write, edit, print, and distribute those books? How much in natural resources were consumed in producing and distributing them? And what was the ultimate impact on the environment? I knew that there had to be a better way, and being an engineering student at the time, I felt it was my responsibility to complain until someone came up with a better solution. Luckily, someone did. In 1999, a man by the name of James Epstein outlined a vision of producing books on demand. Epstein was unaware that a prototype device already existed in the workshop of an inventor by the name of Jeff Marsh. In 2003, Epstein and his business partner, Dane Neller, founded On Demand Books. They applied digital technology to Marsh's device to develop the first working beta machine that would print, trim, bind, and complete a book. They later named this device the Espresso Book Machine, or EBM. Today, the EBM allows customers to print complete books in under 4 minutes. This eliminates all the waste associated with unsold books and allows customers to pull books on demand. So let's start with the definition of just-in-time. A system is said to be just-in-time when you as a customer can get what you need, when you need it, in the exact amount you need it in. Notice I said you as a customer. It's defined from the customer's perspective. Don't get me wrong. The supplier can produce what is needed, when it is needed, and the exact amount needed. However, the constraints are ultimately defined by the customer. Now, I've personally ordered replacement parts for machinery. One day, a motor burned out and I needed a replacement. I called the manufacturer and the rep told me, and I quote, "We don't carry any inventory anymore. We're just in time. If you order today, we can have the motor built for you in 6 weeks." There are a couple flaws with that rep's statement. First of all, it violates the definition of just in time. They didn't have what I needed, 6 weeks was way too long, so it wasn't when I needed it, and they didn't have the quantity I needed, which was just a single motor. This flawed statement is an example of a supplier declaring itself just in time. So here's an example of me, a customer, observing a system to be just in time. There's a pizza place that's walking distance from where I live. I have 2 options when I get there. They serve by the slice, and they also serve whole pizzas. Slices for sale come off a pre-made pizza that's on display. I point and they immediately give me the slice or they heat it up for me. So this is just in time. I get what I want, which is a slice of pizza, when I want it, which is now, and the exact amount which I want, which is 1 or 2 slices. My second option is to order a whole pizza. This takes a little more than 10 minutes when I order. So this is also just in time. I get what I want, which is a whole pizza, when I want it, which is within 10 minutes, and the exact amount I want, which is 1 whole pizza. As a customer, I feel perfectly fine waiting 10 minutes for a whole pizza that's custom made to my liking. On this day, I order half pepperoni, half cheese pizza. So 10 minutes is certainly not excessive, and knowing that my pizza is coming out of the oven, nice and hot, is well worth the wait. It would be silly for the pizza joint to stop carrying pizza by the slice because they've declared themselves just in time. I personally wouldn't want to wait for them to make an entire pizza just to cut me off a slice every single time I order. This would certainly be a bad model during peak lunch hours when lines get long. Now do you see why the motor manufacturer self-declaring just in time is so silly? If you recall from our waste series, you know that wasted time on an airplane bothers me a lot. You oftentimes rush to get on a plane, you then taxi out to the runway and wait in a long line because of some jam at another airport or the weather. You were rushed out there because the airliners wanted to keep up with their on-time departure metric. This metric measures when a plane pushes away from a gate. The airliner is well aware that there's a jam on the runway, but they push away from the gate in anticipation of the jam clearing up. But this often makes the jam worse. This is by definition a push system. As a result, passengers have to wait on the plane rather than in the relative comfort of the airport. So by definition, a push system is working in anticipation of demand. There's no signal to tell you when to start or when to stop, so you generally keep producing. It's generally used to maximize the uptime of a particular workstation or a machine, and they're generally shooting for a local efficiency of that machine. So here are some general characteristics about a push system. First of all, it's an undisciplined approach. Secondly, it's a higher waste approach than a pull system, and it works well in a low customization, high volume environment. Now, in contrast to a push, a pull system is working in reaction to a demand. So there's a signal that tells you when to produce, and perhaps more importantly, when to stop producing. It's system efficiency, so we're not interested in how efficient each station is working. We want the system as a whole to be efficient. So here's a description of pull. Now, it's a more disciplined approach than a push system. It generates a lower amount of waste, and it works very well in a high customization, low volume environment. Today, lots of companies are spending big bucks on ERP systems that generate work releases for an entire company. So work releases are generated before actual orders are placed by the customer. A push system is an attempt to predict what the customer wants and to have that product ready. Notice how the manager is ordering planes to be built even though there's a logjam at each station. She is anticipating customer demand and attempting to push planes through. She is also trying to maximize the output at each station rather than matching the pace at which the customer is pulling. Now let me clarify that there is no inherent evil in a push system. Taiichi Ohno himself said that push systems have their merits. In my opinion, in a perfect world with perfectly smooth demand, with perfect forecasting, a push system would be the way to go. A computer would be able to tell you perfectly what to produce, when to produce it, and in the exact amount to produce. But we don't live in a perfect world. So a pull system is much more practical. Here's an example. Notice how I pull a color plane and the system reacts by replacing just that color. Notice how each worker pulls just that color from the previous workstation. The pace at which workers replace what was pulled is dictated by me, the customer. The system reacts as a whole, and each worker contributes overall to system efficiency rather than individual efficiency you previously saw. So there are three main types of pull systems. First is the supermarket pull. Next is the FIFO, or first in, first out. And last is the hybrid system, which is probably the most popular. So here's a quick quiz. Is Hoover Dam a supermarket pull or a FIFO pull? If you guessed supermarket pull, you got lucky. Dams are used to generate hydroelectric power, but they're also used to retain water during periods of flooding, which in turn provides drinking water during dry periods. All of this, in essence, is a supermarket with stored water that is ready to be consumed as needed. The next one is a hot water heater. Is this a supermarket or a FIFO pull? The answer again is supermarket. One of the main reasons why items are kept on supermarket rather than a FIFO pull is because the time needed to produce the item. A supermarket system allows customers to pull readily available product at a moment's notice. In the case of hot water, most of us are not willing to wait 20 minutes it takes to heat up the water before taking a bath. So the hot water heater has a ready supply of hot water available at a moment's notice. The last example is an air conditioner. This, of course, is a FIFO pull. No cold air is stored inside the AC unit. You turn it on and the signal goes back to the beginning of the system, and through compression, cooling, and release, you receive cool air almost instantaneously. So this is what a supermarket pull system looks like. The customer pulls the item that's sitting there on the shelf, that's say a green square. This triggers a green square to be produced by process 4 to replace what's just been taken. Process 4 takes what it needs from process 3 to replace the green square. Process 3 takes from process 2 what was just taken. This relaying of information goes all the way back to the supplier. Now this is FIFO pull. Items are replenished first in, first out. So if the final customer takes a green square, the signal travels all the way back to the beginning of the process. Notice that there's no intermediate supermarket between the stations. The green square eventually makes its way all the way back to the shelf after another green square, a yellow circle, a red triangle, and a blue octagon have made their way through the system. Know that the supermarket you see here at the end was just for illustration purposes. In a true FIFO pull system, the customer is willing to wait the entire production time for the product, so the supermarket is unnecessary. Remember the air conditioner? Consumers are willing to wait a few seconds for cool air to begin flowing out of the air-conditioned vents. Almost all pull systems in use by companies today are some sort of a hybrid. Here are a few examples. The pizza place was the first place to use two distinct systems as a hybrid. I could order a slice of pizza from the supermarket of pizzas that were ready to go, or I could order a whole pizza that we made from scratch from start to finish using a FIFO system. Starbucks runs a true hybrid system. They have hot water waiting in supermarkets because customers don't want to wait 20 minutes for water to boil every time they want a cup of coffee. The coffee is poured from supermarkets of hot water. This hot water is then customized to your liking by adding coffee or tea, and then sugar or cream using a FIFO model. Subway runs virtually the same way. They have bread ready in supermarkets along with various meats and vegetables. They then customize the piece of bread by adding meats and vegetables to your liking using a FIFO model. So as you can see, all three models, supermarket, FIFO, and hybrid, meet the requirements of providing what is needed, when it is needed, and the exact amount needed. Therefore, the customer will observe all three models as being just in time. We all know that customers can act erratically at times. They can buy in strange patterns that can cause a nightmare for production. This erratic behavior is represented by the spikes you see here on the right. It's up to us as producers to replenish inventory in a calm manner. A well-designed pull system allows us to replenish what is pulled by the customer at a calm and even pace. So how do we as producers react in a calm manner with all this volatility? First, we need to recognize that strict controls have to be put in place for our customers to recognize us as just in time. A great way of doing this is utilizing Kanban. Kanban literally means signboard or billboard in Japanese. In manufacturing, Kanban is a system that controls production, conveyance, and inventory of products. Kanban also controls the pulling, pacing, and sequencing of products. There are three basic types of Kanban we'll introduce. They are visual pulls, bins, and cards. The first type of Kanban is a simple visual control that tells the worker when to produce and, more importantly, when not to produce. Notice that the simple use of a post-it note that serves as a Kanban is a simple way for workers to communicate non-verbally. In a case where work flows one piece at a time through the cell, a visual pull may simply be an extended hand from the next worker. Remember, proximity and simplicity are the keys for the system to work. The next type of pull system uses bins to replace parts that have been consumed by the customer. This is for those cases where stations are not side by side and parts are small and light. Because bins travel between locations, there is always a chance for them to get lost or to be filled with the incorrect parts. To mitigate this, bins should have detailed information permanently fixed to them. This includes the part number or description of the parts that the bin is to house, the to location where the bin is to go when it is full, and the from location where the bin goes when it's empty, and how many bins there are in the system. So I noticed an example of a supermarket near my house. Notice how there are coupled bins dedicated to each type of vegetable. Once the bin is empty, a worker comes by and takes the bin to the back of the store where it's to be refilled. This may happen once every few hours or once per day, depending on the popularity of the vegetable. Those that are more popular have more bins dedicated to them. This is to prevent stockouts when bins are being refilled. I noticed the size of the bins had barcodes. These barcodes likely contain information I previously mentioned. The bin system I just described is called a two-bin system. Now, cards are what generally pop into people's minds when you mention Kanban. Like bins, cards are used when there is some distance between the supplying process and the customer process. They're used when there's some product mix involved, and they're generally housed on the product container in plastic or vinyl sleeves. There are three main types of Kanban cards. They are the production, the withdrawal, and the supplier. Now, this is an example of a production Kanban. I may receive these one at a time or in a stack. The production controller may sequence these in the exact order he or she wants them produced. In all cases, these come from the next workstation that is further downstream. The cards I receive tell me what I need to produce and the sequence I need to produce them in. Notice that all pertinent information is printed directly on the card. The model number, the part description, location the part is being produced, a diagram of the part, where the part raw material resides, and where the finished product is to reside. Now, in order to produce this part, I need to get the raw materials needed to build it. This is where the withdrawal Kanban comes to play. Notice that the withdrawal card also contains all the information that the P card had. The P card travels on a loop from the supermarket to the workstation, and the W card travels on a loop from the workstation to the supermarket. So here's a quick intro into how production and withdrawal Kanban work together. Now, this represents a supermarket with a blue P telling me that there's a blue plane in this system ready to be produced. Now, there's a W card or withdrawal card that tells me this is the part that I need to withdraw to fulfill that blue request. And this is the P card for the previous supermarket. So, when the next workstation decides they need to pull this plane, they drop off this P card to me. I see the P card. I look at what I need to withdraw to produce this plane that they just pulled, and it's this W card. So, I walk over to the previous area, drop off their P card, so they in turn produce what I just took. Walk over back to my station, indeed confirm that it is the blue plane. I finish off the plane, take it to the supermarket, and drop off the P card there. So the system resets and it works in a loop just like that. So here's another demonstration of withdrawal and production Kanban. So the next workstation took their part, and it's up to me to withdraw the right part to replenish what they just took. Now, oftentimes parts look very similar, so I don't know what to withdraw exactly. So we try to solve this by color coding the edges of the production and withdrawal Kanban, but unfortunately they still were getting mixed up. So what we did was actually created puzzle pieces. You can turn this around. Puzzle pieces, so only the correct withdrawal and production combo would work together. You can use little tricks like this to help at least eliminate some of the errors that come with production and withdrawal Kanban combos. This is a real-world example I saw at Sam's Club. Remember, small items are costly and can be stolen. The card is swapped for the good at the register and the card is discarded. After the card is scanned, an electronic signal is sent for reorder. Notice that you can get a quick count of how many items they have in inventory just by looking at the number of cards they have on the floor. I saw another example of this at Walmart. On this particular day, they didn't have the specific detergent that I was looking for, so the worker took the card to the back, scanned the item, and replaced what was needed on the shelf. When the worker scanned the item, an electronic signal was sent back to the manufacturer to replace what was taken. Now that we know what Kanban do, the next logical question is to ask, how many Kanban do we need? This section addresses how to approach Kanban and also provides a basic Kanban calculation. So here are some tips when calculating Kanban quantity. First of all, I recommend that you start in a small, focused area that's relatively stable. Remember, if the process is too erratic, Kanban may not be your best answer right away. Start off with more than enough in inventory and decrease that number slowly over time. So in order to calculate the number of Kanban you need in the system, you need to have a good idea of the following: the average demand over time, the lead time, the safety factor you want to keep, and finally, the number of items that are going to be contained per Kanban. So here's the basic formula for calculating Kanban quantity. It's lead time times demand plus the safety inventory, all divided by the number of items in each container. I've also seen it lead time times demand times the safety factor, all divided by the number of items in each container. Now I know that's a little complex, so let me strip the formula down to the basics. What really drives this formula is demand and lead time. So my dog Apple eats 2 cans of dog food per day. This is the demand. I go shopping once a week, so that's the lead time. Now, every time I go shopping, how many cans of dog food should I buy? Well, I take the demand of 2 cans per day and multiply by 7 days. That means I need to buy 14 cans of dog food every time I go to the store. This makes sense because Apple eats 2 cans a day. So let's say I shop on Saturdays. If I buy 14 cans and 2 cans are consumed per day, by the time next Saturday rolls around, I'll have 0 cans and it's time to buy more. So let's work another simple example with Apple. This time I go shopping once a month. He still consumes 2 cans per day. How many cans do I need to buy when I go shopping monthly? That would be 2 cans per day times 30 days. I'd have to bring home a whopping 60 cans of dog food. So let's take this back to the paper airplane factory. Our customer in this case wants 4 planes per hour. That works out to a plane every 15 minutes. Unfortunately, the lead time for a plane is 1 hour. In other words, it takes 1 hour to make a plane from start to finish. We also have some quality issues with planes, so we need to hold 2 planes in safety inventory at any given time. Can we still satisfy our customer? Sure we can. 4 planes per hour times 1 hour plus 2 planes of safety inventory means we need to hold 6 planes or 6 Kanban to serve our customer. Okay, one last example. We're at a battery supplier, and on average, customers want 20 batteries per hour. It takes 30 minutes to replace a battery. We also carry 10 batteries in safety inventory because of the variation in customer demand. Batteries are packed in pairs for each Kanban. So how many Kanban do we need for this system to work? That's 20 batteries per hour times 30 minutes or 0.5 hours plus 10 batteries in safety. That gives me 20 batteries. Batteries are packed in 2 per Kanban, so that means I need to have 10 Kanban in the system to satisfy customer demand. Now the question always comes up as to how much safety inventory I should carry in the system. I've come across some pretty sophisticated models and equations for computing safety inventory. Take a look online and you'll find a bunch of these, but I'll give you some very basic rules of thumb. You should work to have your system need no more than 10% safety inventory. Carry more to start with and study over time to determine how much you really need. Recall from the inventory section that I advise you to decrease inventory slowly over time or risk running into the rocks. This is a practical example of that advice. So if you're conducting your study and you find that your system requires 20 to 40% safety inventory, then your system is highly variable. I recommend that you find the root cause. Is it that your lead times are highly variable? Or does your customer hoard product and not reorder for months at a time? Are there seasonal contributors to the lead time of your product? In any case, you need to conduct some analysis to determine the source of the variation. After the root cause has been identified and eliminated, you should again proceed with caution and decrease inventory slowly over time. Now, if you need to carry more than 40% safety inventory, perhaps you're not ready to implement a Kanban system. This highly volatile state needs some serious work to first create stability. At this stage, you may want to use a forecasting model to set inventory levels while you begin building stability. If a pull system doesn't work for your organization right now, don't get too discouraged. It took Toyota many years to get this system working. Work on stabilizing your processes and eliminating the root causes of erratic demand. This will make setting up a pull system a lot easier. So here's a quick summary of what we learned. We went through the definition of just-in-time. We compared push versus pull. I took you through a simple Kanban calculation, and then we explored the various types of pull systems.